Welcome back from the break. I hope you had a chance to stretch your legs and maybe get something to drink, but let's carry on with the lesson. Okay, so what we're going to have a look at now is specifically the definition. We're going to have a look at the definition of evolution. So we're going to have a look at some examples where we see how evolution actually takes place. And then we're going to have a look at a hypothesis, and we're going to see what a hypothesis is, even look at an example. And then we're going to have a look at the theory, or a theory, and an example of a theory. And then we're going to have a look at what the difference between the two is. Okay, so that we are able to understand those two concepts well. All right, so let's have a look at what is evolution. Okay, now I'm going to start at the diagram first, and we're going to have a look at this this is evidence of whale evolution. And the reason why we have such a comprehensive record of whale evolution is because if you remember when you studied the formation of fossils and how fossils are formed, it's very important that when the organism dies, it falls into, usually in a body of water where it can be covered by sediment quite quickly. Okay, and this is why we have such a nice clear record of what whale evolution, or how whale evolution took place. So if we have a look right at the top here, we can see this is a four-legged organism or animal. And if we look at the next one even, we can see that they've got 4 legs and they look like land mammals. Okay, and in fact, it was very similar to a dog-like organism that lived on land. And obviously the environmental conditions changed and they needed to adapt to a more watery or a more aquatic environment. So as you can see here in the next organism, you can already see there's a change in the body shape. So the body is becoming a little bit more elongated. The limbs, you can see the positioning of the limbs has changed so that they are more adept at swimming possibly in the water. Remember, they need to now survive in water. They need to go and find food. They need to go or get away from predators. And as time goes on, and this takes place over millions of years, here you can see the body, you can even see the tail is adapting, it's changing, and the limbs start looking more like paddles, okay, which makes it more, or makes it a lot easier to swim, and so it can swim faster. And all of this you can see now, even the structure's changing, and these changes take place through mutations. So when mutations occur, and that mutation happens to make the organism more suited to the environment that it finds itself in, then that would be selected to survive. So that organism will survive. And when it survives, it's able to then reproduce. And what it does is then it passes on its genes of that mutation or changed characteristic. And so you can see that as we go along here, already at this stage, the tail has now developed. It's become way more, it's much longer, okay, and so usually they use that as a propeller or as a stabilizer in the water. And even we can't see anymore, we don't see any evidence of hind limbs anymore. So they have actually changed completely. All right, and here we only see the evidence of the front limbs. All right, and then when we look at the next one, we can see that the body has now become more elongated and the tail is becoming a little bit stronger, and so that it's actually a little bit closer to what we know. And the last diagram over here, we see this is the whale as we know it today. Okay, so this it doesn't take place in a couple of years, it takes place over a very long period of time, but we do have evidence of this evolution, and we can see really nicely how it does take place. Okay, so let's have a look at the concept, and basically what evolution is it's processes that take place. And during those processes, as I said, we have genetic mutations that occur, and they then change or they transformed life from what it was in its earliest forms. So if we have a look here, this earliest form, if we have a look at the earliest forms, and compare it to what it is today. We see it's totally transformed completely. All right, so, and what has happened is from those earliest forms, life has now been transformed to the diversity. And you know, diversity is when we talk about lots of different organisms or lots of differences. So there's quite a vast diversity that we see that characterizes life on Earth today. Okay, so from what it was originally to what it is now, it's a totally different organism. Okay, and as I said when we were going through this, is that it would be mutations that take place. And you know, mutations, we've already learned that they're random, they occur randomly, and they then would work either in favor of an organism or maybe against the organism, but that is how the organisms change. So what we see in the transformation is very important, is a change in the genes. Okay, we're going to have a look at what we now call biological evidence. And as I said earlier, bio means living. So we're looking at the evolution of living organisms. And if we have a look at the diagram here, this again is a good example. We see evidence of how the modern day horse that we know, how it has evolved. So if we have a look, that this modern day horse is related, okay, and it came from this organism here at the beginning. So in other words, it has descended from this organism and is related to all of those that have lived in the past. Okay, and as you can see through the diagram here, there are changes. So if we have a look at the modern horse over here, and we can see how it is different to its earliest ancestor over here. So even though that might not look the same, it is related, and it has evolved through the ages and slightly changed, or it's changed over time to what we know it as today. So if we have a look at the actual definition, it basically means that all present day forms, so everything that we see on the earth today, so all the living organisms, all the plants, all the animals, all the unicellular and multicellular organisms, we have a look, we see they have descended from, so in other words, they've come from something in the past, and they are related to, because they have descended from those organisms. So all of those that lived in the past. They may look different, and we can see that here. So if we have a look at the first horse, and we look at what we know today as the horse, we can see they look different. Okay, and that is because they became modified. Right, and that modification took place in the form of mutation. So it was the genes that were modified. And because of that modification, they then look different from one generation to another. Okay. All right, now we're going to have a look at the concept of a hypothesis. And we're going to see the definition of a hypothesis, and it's important that we know the definition, and we know it as a testable statement. So in other words, when we formulate a hypothesis, it must be testable, so we must be able to test it. And basically, it would be a testable statement about the natural world. Okay, because we're working in life sciences, it is always about the natural world, and it can be used. So we can use hypotheses to build more complex. Okay, so we want more complex inferences or explanations of why certain things happen as they do, or why things are as they are. And let's have a look at an example here. Okay, so we can say, or we might say, the high incidence. So in other words, there's a lot of people that are infected with HIV. Okay, so the high incidence of HIV and AIDS in the world may be due to a lack of education. Okay, so we're saying that, we're making a statement. We're saying that due to a lack of education, a lot of people don't know about the causes of the disease, and therefore there is so much HIV and AIDS in the world today. That is a statement that we can't make, and we can't say, yes, that is a fact. We actually need to test it. Okay, and that's why we always say that a hypothesis is a testable statement. So I now need to go and see that if this is the case, is the fact that there's so much HIV in the world, is it due to the fact that very many people don't know what causes the disease and possibly how it is spread and things like that. So it's a statement that I can now go and test. All right. And right, now what is a theory? So we're going to have a look at the definition of a theory. And basically what a theory is it's a well-substantiated explanation. So well-substantiated means there's lots of facts, there's lots of information that backs up that statement or that explanation. So it's not just something that somebody's just thought about out of their head and decided that this is a theory. Okay, so it is well substantiated. So there's lots of backup evidence for that explanation. And again, it's an aspect, it's some aspect of the natural world because we work in the natural world. And it can incorporate, as I said, there's facts, there's laws, there's inferences, and there's tested hypotheses that are all the information that substantiates that explanation. All right, so let's have a look at an example. If we look at this example, we know or we say and we accept it that this is fact, that the sun is the center of the universe. Okay, so everything revolves around the sun. Okay, so all the planets, okay, including Earth, then would revolve around the sun. We don't question it, we accept it as a theory. It's known as the heliocentric theory. Helio means sun, and centric obviously means the middle. And this is an accepted because it's an explanation that is accepted because it has facts, it has laws, it has inferences, and it has tested hypotheses that back it up. All right, the theory of evolution. So it's not just a story that somebody's thought about and, has tried to tell a story. It is actually a theory, a scientific theory that has been developed. So it's definitely not just a story. It's been developed over many years by many different scientists. So there's lots of scientists that have worked on it, and it is regarded as a scientific theory, which is very important because there are hypotheses that are related to evolution that have been tested and have been verified over time. So let's have a look at the diagram here. This is a nice diagram of evolution or of evolutionary relationships between organisms. And if we have a look at the base of the tree here, we see a very simple unicellular organism at the base. As we go up the tree, we can see the next level is slightly more complex than that unicell. So here we see it looks like ferns, and this would be mosses. And you have learned these plants, and you know that they're not as complex. And here we see another unicellular organism. Okay, and as we go up the tree, we see there's a branch, and these are our gymnosperms. And we go higher up the branch, and here we have our angiosperms. And each branch, as we go up, we see the organisms becoming more complex until we find those organisms that we know today. And if you have a look, so here we have plants, and here we have insects and arthropods and those kind of organisms. Here we have, on this branch, we see our organisms, amphibians, and then we go to mammals, which we know as the top of our kingdoms, all right, of all the organisms. So there you can see how evolution has been developed, or the theory of evolution has been developed, looking at the complex or the more complex nature of life as it evolves till we reach the top. Okay, so I hope you guys are understanding the difference and you understand what evolution is. And so just to summarize quickly, we want to say that the theory of evolution is a scientific theory because it has been developed over time using evidence, using hypotheses that have been tested, using facts, using laws, and it has been tested, so it is supported by all of this evidence, and we can see that there, therefore we say that evolution is a theory, a scientific theory.